everyone, and thank you for tuning in to a special Pride-themed episode of RFA Insider.
That's right, and for today's action-packed extra special episode, we've brought in a panel to discuss personal experiences of either identifying as LGBTQIA+, or covering LGBTQIA+ issues.
And in an extra special bonus, we've finally got our first non-hate comment by someone that isn't my mom.
Ooh.
Stay tuned for all that and more with Amy and Eugene, because RFA Insider will be right back after this. You're listening to the RFA Insider podcast, made by two real-life staffers at Radio Free Asia.
If you'd like to send us feedback, there are many ways you can do this.
You can send us an email at insider@rfa.org.
You can comment on our webpage at rfa.org/English/insider. Just click on the episode you're listening to and write your comment below.
Or you can send us a tweet at RFA Insider or visit us in person.
No, don't visit us in person.
Right, don't visit us in person. But anyway, we really want to hear from you.
So tune in every other Friday and we'll take you behind the scenes.
And tell you what the news really means here at RFA Insider. Okay, welcome back to RFA Insider. So last time we had a panel discussion, we went way over time. So let's just cut the banter and get right into it with some Podcast Free Asia. So exciting news in Podcast Free Asia today. We got our first non-hate comment, and it's a positive one. This comment yet again comes from YouTube, which is not one of the ways we recommended to get in touch with us on our contact bumper. But we'll still read the comment and react to it on the air anyway, because we'll take any feedback we can at this point.
It's true. This
comment comes from Secular Sekai 8910 on YouTube, and he writes, let's get a drum roll. Interesting stuff. Whoa. And that was his comment.
You really undersold the non-hate comment.
Well, we did get a comment a while ago where my mom said, I listened to the first two episodes and they were really interesting. I'm like, yeah, thanks, Mom. But this is the first time we do get a positive comment from somebody that is not related to us, which is good.
It could possibly be my mom.
I guess I didn't take that into account. Is your mom Secular Sekai 8910?
She is not secular, though, so.
Oh, okay. Now, this was in reaction to the language episode that we did in, I guess, the last episode 8.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there is a back and forth because Charlie, the person who is in charge of this podcast, actually responded, and there was another response. But it's more of the same, just, you guys are doing a really good job, which, we appreciate that very much. So thank you very much, Secular Sekai. Sekai, of course, meaning world in Japanese. So this means secular world, which is pretty interesting. But again, we're trying to go by this really fast today. So I don't know. It doesn't seem right to divide today's segments into two of our traditional segments. So I think we're going to start a new segment today. We're going to call it, because we have a panel discussion, we're going to call it You've Been Panelized.
You've been panelized.
Okay, so this is the first ever You've Been Panelized segment. What do we have for You've Been Panelized today, Amy?
Okay, so we're 3 weeks into the month of June, and DC's Pride festivities are kind of starting to wind down. But we'd like to keep the celebration going a little bit longer with our own Pride episode.
Oh yeah, sounds like fun. So this episode's been marinating between us for a while because, well, our coworkers are incredibly diverse and accomplished crew of journalists, and many of them come from Asian countries where Pride is not out in the open.
So with that in mind, we've invited 3 of our coworkers to come on and discuss their experiences as gay journalists in Asia and the US, and also talk about news coverage of LGBTQIA stories.
So first off, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first repeat guest on RFA Insider. He is RFA's social media editor, going again by his Starbucks name, Wilson.
Hello, and thanks for having me back. I'm Wilson. If you want to learn more about my work as RFA, be sure to check out episode 3. I'm a gay journalist who moved to the U.S. a few years ago after covering social issues and politics in Southeast Asia, where I'm from.
Okay, so welcome back, Wilson. We did really enjoy having you for episode 3. And can I just ask, where does the name Wilson come from?
It's just a random name. The other day I went to Starbucks and I don't want to use my birth name. So I thought Wilson is a good name. It sounds like a white name, so people will not ask questions.
I get it. So they don't if you say your actual name, they'll misspell it. And okay,
that's right.
Yeah, I see.
All right. Also joining our panel is So-san Ang, also known as Khwar. who's a journalist for the Burmese service.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is Sosan, but you can call me just Khwar. I am openly gay journalist with RFA Burmese service. I proudly came to be the first openly gay journalist in Burma, since no one else have come out publicly before me, I started working as a journalist when I was 18 in Burma. I moved here in US 2017. I cover a lot of issues, but mainly politics and human rights. I came out while I was there in Burma, which was quite challenging. But here in US, I have a lot more freedom to be myself. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you. And rounding out the panel and playing the part of the old man.
Greg, I want to say that I didn't write that. Eugene wrote that.
We have Greg Barber, the head of digital operations and innovation.
Yes, indeed. Playing the part of the old man, I'm getting better and better at it. Thanks
Aren't we all?
Thanks for having me on. My unintentional Starbucks name, I think, or undesired Starbucks name is Craig. Because
okay.
Right, because my name's Greg, and so that... Anyhow, yes. So I'm a newcomer to RFA, but a 25-year veteran in U.S. journalism. I grew up in Fairfax, Virginia, just a few miles from here, where we're recording in Washington, D.C. I started my career at what is now the PBS NewsHour and spent 18 years at the Washington Post, among other stops. I'm out and married and pretty boring, but I'll be sure to share the non-boring parts here.
All right, great. So at least Craig is a name, though, because sometimes I go to Starbucks and I get back Engine,
Come on, that's a good one. Yeah.
Who names their kid Engine?
At the Thai restaurant sort of near my house, I'm Grek, which with a K, which I'll take that too.
Okay, that's cool. Well, this podcast is not about Starbucks names, and although that is a fun discussion that we could have. So let's get into the first question, and what have we got?
All right, so I want to start off by noting that recruiting for this episode proved more difficult than usual. It was clear that our colleagues had lots of different factors to consider when it came to talking about their experiences on air. Obviously, you're all out at RFA, but did you ever have any concerns or hesitations about being out in this field of work?
At RFA, I enjoy a supportive environment since I found that my colleagues kind of understand and respect each other. Although I haven't come out to my family yet, but I'm not too worried since they don't speak or understand English. So I think my little secrets feel a little safer here.
I was. I'm not worried about it today, and not at RFA, but I was concerned when I did come out. I came out at work about 20 years ago, and when back then I knew far fewer gay journalists than I know today. I definitely worried at the time that other people's prejudices could hinder my career. Also, at the time, there were it was a very different time. There were bloggers who were outing people who were not already out. So there was a little bit of pressure in that way too. I came out partly because I'm a bad actor, and because the kind of doing the pronoun dance around my partner and that kind of thing just got to be a bit too much. But I also decided that I'd be happiest if I could bring my authentic self to work. I also think that as a journalist, it's important for other journalists to be, for us to be open about our backgrounds and experiences, so consumers of our work can know, where we come from. And so that's me.
Greg, I'd just like to ask, so 20 years ago, it was 2004.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you were in the field long before that. Is that the case?
It's true.
So how long were you not out and working as a journalist?
About 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that difficult or?
It ish. It was in the sense that again, it was that sort of kind of having to edit. When someone says, what were you doing last? How was your weekend? And thinking about, this is what I did, and this is who I did it with, and not being able to tell those parts of the story. Where today, if someone asks, how was your weekend, I can just tell the story. And it's, so it was just a lot of extra sort of cognitive load.
I see. So it might be kind of awkward. Me and my significant other, we went to,
right. Like or I did a lot of selective editing of, not talking about, this boy, like my boyfriend or what have you, I not mentioning those sorts of things, which, by the way, the time that I was not out at the office, it certainly had nothing to do with the colleagues that I worked with at the time. I think they would have been perfectly, accepting of that. Part of it was also, I mean, to be honest, my own acceptance of it, which varied over time. I come from a faraway land called the 20th century, and so
it's not that far.
It was very. I grew up, with understanding and sort of having instilled in me all of the prejudices of the society that I grew up in about gay people, even though the gay person was me.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that on this particular issue, the world has moved very quickly. Because if you look at movies from 20 years ago, the Spider-Man movie, for example, there is a really homophobic moment in the beginning of it.
What are you doing up there?
Staying away from you. That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
And Spider-Man is supposed to be the most moral, heroic character who always does the right thing, and then he's throwing out this homophobic comment in that movie, and then I watched that with my son recently. I was like, oh my God, I didn't notice that the first time. What's going on with that? So I think we've moved very rapidly on this issue.
Yeah. Or even for journalism, right? When I was in journalism school, it was more old school. Oh, you shouldn't vote. You shouldn't show any sort of preference one way or another, or any sort of personal identity as a journalist.
That's so hard to do, though.
Right?
Well, right, because journalists, newsflash, journalists are people.
Right.
And so we have to be from somewhere. We have relationships with other people. We have, mothers and fathers and marriages and children and all those sorts of things. It just, as an industry, a notion where you have to pretend that you aren't that you aren't also a person in the world. It's just not realistic.
Two of the people here they got into journalism outside of the U.S., and maybe the environment there was a little bit different than here. So we would like to know, what was LGBTQIA plus representation like in media and journalism there?
So yes, being gay is really tough where I come from, Burma, where LGBT acceptance is really, really low. Being an openly gay journalist is more challenging. I am also a broadcaster for RFA Burmese, so I'm in front of the camera a lot. I remember when I first started the broadcasting thing, the comments were pretty bad. People would say things like, hey, faggot, and other really awful stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? This is who I am. I guess today the world is getting easier and easier today, though. I don't see those hateful comments anymore. In fact, I receive a lot of messages from young Burmese LGBTQ people who are saying grateful to have someone like me representing them and raising their voices. Some of them even say they wish they could be out and proud like I am today.
Mm-hmm.
Despite all the negative comment, I'm really grateful here in RFA, giving me a platform to be myself. So just last week, I officially came out on the show claiming that I am the first gay openly journalist from Burma. And I'm surprised that people are taking so positively this time.
Okay, when you say you came out officially on the show, you're talking about a podcast you host, or...
Oh, yeah. We have a weekly podcast in Burmese. So, this is a Pride Month, and we invite the NUG exile government human rights minister on the show, who is openly gay. So I think it's a perfect time for me to let my RFA audience know who I am, so proudly. Mm-hmm. So, but the real message I want to send out is, LGBTQ plus individuals are making a difference in every sector. That's the key message I want to give to the audience.
Okay, you did mention the NUG, and that is the shadow government of Myanmar. Lawmakers who were ousted by the coup back in February 2021. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So was that difficult for you to come out? Were you nervous about it at all, or did it just came out naturally and it was totally okay?
I mean, I'm okay because I'm been out since I was a little kid, so
Okay.
it's no problem.
We
for
forgot
me.
to mention that Khwar is technically our podcasting senior since he does many Burmese service podcasts.
Okay.
I'm curious. What kind of response did you get from the audience, and particularly did you hear from other LGBTQIA plus journalists in either in Myanmar or folks that were just regular listeners who responded to you coming out?
I don't hear anything from journalists. I don't think. I don't know. They are not out like me, but I get a lot of comment on YouTube and Facebook, so that we always post. On YouTube, I want to say a lot of positive comment, but on Facebook, there's some very negative comment, So, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, like, with all of us here, like, whenever I get negative criticism on everything, it really bugs me and bothers me a lot, and I take it to heart. Like, did I really say the word in that way that someone hated it that much? I'm talking about my previous podcast experience, or like, I would talk about something and they say like, well, you're completely wrong and you obviously didn't study what you were talking about. I'd really like hurt and was soul crushing at times, but that's not dealing with who I am. That's just dealing with what I said.
Of course, it's painful, but I think that I get used to this over time because like I had all the kind of negative comments since I was in high school.
Oh my!
And yeah, I get used to it over time.
So I guess after a while,
you just be who you are, and you.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that you just get used to. I think it's also something. Well, I mean, to the extent that anyone can get used to that. It's also just something that is just around, right? It's it's just part of the experience of being a gay person in the world is hearing just ambiently, even if it's not directed at you, this sort of notion of, yeah, not that, like that, right? And so, and so I think that, you just kind of get used to, maybe it's sort of like getting used to the like pH level in water or something like that, right? You just kind of get used to the overall sort of negative vibe, but then absolutely when it's directed at you, it sounds like we've all had experiences of, someone deciding it was their job to tell you that, who you are is not something they enjoy.
Yes.
So it never feels good. It never feels great, but it's something you get used to, and ideally, and it took me a long time to do this, but you don't take it personally.
Yeah, and also another thing to keep in mind, I think, is that if 1,000 people are listening, then maybe 3 will comment. You shouldn't worry about it. But it seems like the most vocal people tend to be negative, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, did this representation or lack of representation influence your choice of career at all?
So yes, I mean, I chose to be a journalist because I know, how important it is to hear stories that are often ignored. Through my work, I want to help people who don't have a voice and are often silenced. I make sure their stories are heard loud and clear. This is personal for me because as a child, I faced a lot of bullying things due to my sexual orientation.
Yeah, I want to add to what Khwar just said that LGBTQIA representation in journalism in my country also remain very limited and often fraught with challenges. Because for years, these LGBTQIA characters and story were depicted negatively and reinforcing harmful stereotypes. While there's been some progress with more inclusive portrayals in media, journalism, but unfortunately it lacks due to government control. Like all newspaper in my country is controlled by the government. And when you have a story, like negative story, and they just, they try to put like a gay person or like a gay man or like lesbian woman like in the headline just for clickbait. And it's still going on. Yeah.
So you're saying when they put gay or lesbian in the headline when that has nothing to do with the story at all?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
and that drives clicks?
Yes, because people, they're just curious about it. And I think people, they love reading like negative story or like story about this community.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my time when I was a journalist there, like my editor told me that I should not cover too much about like LGBTQIA story because the newsroom didn't want that. Yeah, and the only exception that I remember is that when I cover a gay man who entered politics a couple of years ago, and that's the only like big LGBTQIA story that I had during my time there. But things are changing, fortunately.
So interestingly, you were in a situation where if you were to have done more stories about LGBTQIA people, you would have gotten more traffic, but they didn't want the stories because they didn't want to acknowledge that people
I think
existed.
I don't have an answer for this, but I could say that the government controls this. So the government didn't want that.
Got it.
And this is what I've heard from some of my friends. Like, so the Pride month in everywhere is in June, but in my country, the Pride parade is in September, like around the time of the Mid-Autumn Festival, because people they use that as an excuse to gather publicly. They cannot gather in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like LGBTQIA stories aren't taken as like serious news in your country, more like on the fringes or like kind of
more in like
tabloid
showbiz and
stories.
tabloid stories. People love reading that. Yes.
All right, so the next part of our discussion, let's move on to being LGBTQIA plus in Asia, not necessarily in journalism. And so I'm going to start the conversation, although this has nothing to do with me and my personal experiences. But I lived in Korea between 2006 and 2017, and there are two, I guess, anecdotal or observational things that I guess, witnessed. First is there was an actor named Hong Seok-chun who was the former host of 뽀뽀뽀, which is a children's show that could be described as the Korean version of Sesame Street. And he came out and he was immediately fired from his career in the year 2000. And his media career was over. He was not getting booked on TV shows, and basically he had to retire early, even though he's still relatively young. But then by the 2010s, he made a comeback in media, making appearances on many different interview shows. And at first, it was all about his coming out experience and his ordeals after the effect and what happened to him. But then eventually, he started to get booked again just for being himself. And LGBTQ issues were not the focus of his appearances. But I would still consider Korea to be a place that is hostile to people who are anything other than straight. So often people will point to him and say, no, look, he's back and we like him. So, we accept gays. But I think often a society's treatment of celebrities is cited as progress to how well the society treats the demographic that the celebrity is a part of. But I would suggest that this is merely an example of the society treating famous people well, and it does not necessarily immediately translate to the society treating normal people with the same orientation, with the same respect. And then the second thing I'd like to talk about was when I was a university student, they had an English language magazine, and each issue they'd debate a different social issue with people writing back and forth why they supported or were against it. There was one that was on the issue of same-sex marriage. The ones that were in favor were saying things like, we live in a democracy and the people should have equal rights, including the benefits of marriage. All the similar things that we hear about it whenever this is being debated anywhere. But the cons, they all centered on a specific single issue. And I want to go around and see, because I hid the answer from you guys. I want to know what you think this single issue might be, particular to South Korea in those years. Any guesses?
Say, like, Christianity?
Christianity, okay. Anyone else?
Military mandate.
Military mandate. Oh, that's interesting.
Ooh,
okay.
I wouldn't have thought of that one.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah. This is the answer. So they said it's because they wanted to help Korea's declining birth rate. So as if preventing same-sex couples from marrying would result in them just decide, I can't marry a man. Gee, maybe I should marry a woman and procreate instead. And there are people with
anything for the birth rate.
Serious articles writing, we have to do everything we can to increase our birth rate because it's declining sharply. So we should not allow people of the same sex to marry each other because they won't have children that way. Which, wow. I mean, come on. And meanwhile, Korea still has it's still such a big embarrassment to have a kid out of wedlock. But yet, the way to solve the birth rate is to stop gay people from marrying. And I'm like, that just doesn't seem like it logically fits together at all, because nobody's just going to be like, yeah, let's have a kid because I can't be gay. I mean,
right.
I don't know.
Right. It's sort of a like slap the hand and stop that. It's like, not quite how it works.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's, again, not my personal experience. I'm sure those of us on the panel might have something a little more personal than that. So if you'd like to share, please go ahead. Hello, listeners. This is Eugene here, and I'm just inserting this trigger warning because the next part of this discussion contains topics related to abuse and attempted suicide. If you'd like to skip past that part, you can fast forward to 2752.
Yeah, let me share a little bit of my personal experience. So I grew up in a small village in Cayenne, Burma. Like I said before, I have known I was gay since I was a kid. My grandparents and aunties, raised me up, and they were all accepting that I'm gay, except for my grandmother. So people call me faggot is in Burmese in Burmese, a child is mean faggot. So, but it didn't really bother me that much at the time. Even though it was my name,
Wait a second. You thought it was your name?
I know, because they keep calling me that. So
how young are we talking here when people were starting to call you that and you thought it was your name?
This is like 7.
Oh my gosh!
Wow! And was it people like neighbors, people outside your family?
Oh. Yeah, outside my family, friends, and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah. Okay.
How did you feel?
Okay, but did you know what it meant at the time?
I didn't know. Oh,
wow.
I have no idea what that means. Yeah, they keep calling me that, and my grandmother is really hate that at that time, a child, So he always asked me to respond harshly, saying things like, hey, if you want to know if I'm gay or not, why don't you come and sleep with me? That's what my grandmother.
That is brassy, Grandma. Okay, all right.
So yeah, but I found that so awful and refused to say it. And then because of this, I often got beaten, and I was kept in a tiny room at home, excluded from activities with all other kids just because I was gay.
So wait,
Yeah.
who was keeping you in a tiny room in your home and beating you over this?
My grandmother.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
All the time.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I always got really emotional thinking about my young age as a gay person. It's incredibly touched. Believe it or not, I wanted to, ended my life and attempted suicide several times. It works. We wouldn't be having this conversation now. Back then I didn't have many people to talk to, which is that's the reason why I became a journalist as well. So I wanted to give a voice to those who are ignored and silenced. I don't want them to be like mine.
Yeah.
But, struggle make me stronger. So when I was 16, I ran away from home. I lived myself in Yangon and went to college myself and faced a lot of challenges. But despite everything, I'm happy I can be whoever I am today, living in U.S. I can be whoever I want to be. But now my grandmother, who's stay alive, she's starting to accept my sexuality today.
That's great to hear. Yeah.
And has your grandma know about you coming out on the talk show the other day? Or did she watch it? Has you told her?
Oh, since I've been living here in U.S., she's more accepting now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to Khwar because when I was in high school, I knew that I was gay when I was in high school, but then my friend called me faggot or girly, or they excluded me from the group because I spent time hanging out with female friends in my class. And I think growing up as a gay man in Southeast Asia is tough because when I was in high school, and no one ever told me hey, it's okay if you have a feeling for a boy and you think it's something weird. And I hated myself when I was in high school when I had a feeling for a male friend, and I thought I needed to fix it or vow never to tell anyone. And I remember the first time I told a boy that I miss him, and I feel really disgusted about myself. And that was during my first year at university, and then it took me 2 or 3 years to accept myself and finally came out to my close friend.
I don't know if your experience was the same, but self-acceptance is the first and sometimes hardest step, right? You know, I certainly found that that I was more critical of myself than other people were of me, and particularly when it came to this part of myself, just trying to understand it and and in some cases push away from it, right?
Mm-hmm. And Wilson here talks about wanting to fix it.
That was like high school kids at that time thinking I could fix it, or I could have a wife, have a child, like normal, quote unquote normal man.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm a gay person, and I'm also a person with brown eyes, and I could mask both of those things. They have really nice different colored contacts these days, but it would just be masking it in the same way.
Right.
And in the end, it would not be truthful, and it certainly wouldn't be. It wouldn't feel right to me, and so there's no changing any of those things. And honestly, I've having gotten to be the older, more boring person that I've become. I don't know. I find being gay to be one of the less interesting things about myself.
Right.
Just because it is just that, I was born this way. I was born, to be as tall as I am. I was born to have the voice that I have. I was born, So, I think that things that are much more interesting are where I tend to focus. But yeah, I mean, it's not a changeable thing. It is.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody asked me when I told them we were recording for this episode, they were like, oh, like, what's so interesting to talk about? Isn't it just, like, the same experiences? Like what's so different about being, like, a gay journalist than just being a journalist? But I think it's great that, like, we can say that at this point rather than being like, oh, like, whoa, how interesting, like how exotic or different.
Yeah. This would have been a much more subversive podcast, even here in the U.S. 20 years ago. Because there were far fewer journalists who were out, more journalists who were concerned that being out would mean that you'd have access to fewer stories, right? Or this is still a concern for people in our field, but that when you're doing reporting in places where homosexuality isn't as accepted, that you are putting yourself at some amount of risk. Particularly some of the places that RFA broadcasts, and other parts of the world as well. You're putting yourself at some amount of risk, even if you're talking about it here in the U.S. in a place where it is more accepted. So it's great that we're in a place where the question is this really that interesting?
Yeah.
And I think the goal is eventually that we would get to the point in society where we wouldn't need to designate months for specific types of minorities, right? I mean, because we'll get there eventually, hopefully.
Oh, I want to add one thing. That's one thing about gay or coming out is that when you come out to your friend in the gay term, it just go with you. Your friend will refer to you as like your gay friend. Like, do you know my gay journalist friend? They just go with you and for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It suddenly starts to follow you around, and it's like, okay, but I don't know. I'm also I'm part Italian. Is that also like my part Italian friend? Like, it's right. It's just the things that people tend to underscore. It's, I don't know, strange. And yeah, like Eugene was saying, I hope it gets to a place where it's less that.
Yeah.
Like a bit othering, right? Like something that sets you apart from like the default, quote unquote.
Yeah. That's right. However, I'm different from Greg and Khwar is that I haven't come out to my family yet. And it's kind of strange and ironic, like to be able to be my authentic self with everyone except my family, but I think it would take time for me to come out to them. Like a few months ago, I watched like an Oscar-nominated movie called American Fiction, and there was a scene that this gay man, he regret like not coming out to his dad who passed away, and he said something to his brother like, "My dad died without knowing the whole truth about me," and that scene it hit me really hard because I don't want it to be my story. And so a couple of months ago, when my parents visited me, and I thought I could come out to them, but I ended up but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Yeah, because I feel like when I come out, like, I need to like prepare them. Like, it's not just like saying, "Hey, I'm gay," and just leave it to them.
Yeah, of course.
I need to help them to read document or know more about these before like telling them like the truth about their son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you suspect that they suspect, though?
I think so, and my brother may suspect too, but
Okay.
there's no confirmation, so...
So maybe it's something that maybe they just like, oh, maybe, but I don't want to talk about that. Let's just
Yeah.
sweep
Can
it aside.
I share a story? We can cut this out if you don't want to share it. But I met Wilson's parents when they came to visit,
Oh.
and as well as Wilson's boyfriend. And then we were all together, and Wilson would just be like, "Oh, this is my boyfriend," in front of his parents. And we were like, "Aren't you like? We thought you like hadn't come out." And he was like, "Oh, it's fine. They don't speak English at all." So
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's knowing when and how to do that is really hard. You know, and that's actually something that they don't give you in the gay handbook. Is the what I didn't realize was even having I've been at this for 40 something years that being gay is a matter of coming out over and over and over
Right.
again. So I'm relatively new to RFA. I've only been here for 3 months. And so anytime you enter a new space, it's, right. Like not everyone is going to know this about myself, which again, it's not something like I feel like, that I need to go walk around and say, "Hi, I'm Greg. I've got brown eyes." I hope that's okay with you. So it's the same kind of thing here, but it's this process of, it's something that, people find out about in different ways or whatever. It's interesting that it's a thing about yourself that you're kind of always needing to communicate in some special way. And I've always found that weird, but it is. And it's that experience kind of over and over again. But coming out to your family that's one of the hardest ones because you want it to be special and you want it to be right and you want everyone to, come out of it feeling good, maybe most of all yourself. And those stories, just kind of really run the gamut. So it can be, it's really hard, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is not related to journalism at all, but I just had the question, like, it just popped into my mind. Have you ever been in a situation where, because you were mentioning, like, this is my gay friend, right? Where someone says, "Oh, I have this other gay friend. You guys would totally hit it off because you're both gay." Like,
It happened to me, I think twice. My friend, okay, you're both gay, you're both Asian. Maybe you will like each other. And we went on like a date. I would say yes. But there wasn't no chemistry at all.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so awkward.
Yeah, when I also post like something on Facebook with a one man and me, like a picture, people don't really care. When I post with a man, they'll ask, "Hey, is it your boyfriend?"
Right. Yeah. No, I think, and it's almost always well-meaning folks,
Yeah, sure, of
right?
course.
Right? But it's just like, "You're gay, he's gay," and it's like, yeah, that's not how that works. I'm from Fairfax. If you say like, "Hey, here's another person from Fairfax," and it's like, right, we just both happen to be born in the same place. That does not mean we have a whole lot in common beyond maybe we shopped at the same malls.
And I guess like you could think of the reverse, how asinine it would be. It's like, well, you're both straight. What's the problem?
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
Yeah.
obviously,
Right.
there's more to it than that.
Right. You like girls. She's a girl. Huh?
Hello, it's Eugene again. I think one of our weaknesses at RFA Insider is that whenever we have this kind of panel discussion, our conversations are just so interesting that we can't really decide to cut anything. So, once again, we've made the decision to divide this episode into 2 parts. So, retroactively, this is 9A, and the second half of our discussion will be in episode 9B. But lucky for you, both halves will be dropping on the same day, so goodbye for now, and for Amy Lee, I'm Eugene Huang, and we'll be back with Greg, Wilson, and Khwar in the second half. See you there.